Okay, let's get started. Let's get this over with. Hello everybody. Hello YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be talking about the things I like, the things that I dislike in books. So of course we are going to start with the positive, and that is the things that I like or seek out in books. So first I am just going to start with my favorite genres and the types of books that I usually like to pick out. So obviously my first favorite type of book are vampire stories. I also like Greek myth retellings, specifically from women's points of view. I also like books with a lot of positive or negative LGBT rep. I also love urban fantasy. I love vampire short stories. I love historical fiction, and I sort of like YA, but I've been sort of on the fence about that lately. And now we can go into more detail about the things that I like in books. I have 5 specific points that I would like to discuss today. So my first favorite thing that I like in books is books based on another established character's perspective. I know this technically counts under the genre of retellings, but plenty of these books are prequels, sequels, or even other series parts too. I actually usually don't like main character perspectives for too long. They tend to be a little bit boring or general in order to fit into that concept of the reader as the insert in the story, and I love different side characters and what they could bring to a series. So having a book from their perspective with different points of view, different habits, different character motivations, or different abilities is really, really exciting. It's a real treat. I also like when it is a female perspective on an already established book based from a male's perspective. That is also included in my Greek myth told from women's perspective favorite, but there's other books in that example too. My favorite book series of all time, The Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice, does this often. Mostly it's Lestat's perspective, but there are plenty of books in Louis, Armand's, and David's perspectives, which are very, very interesting. Some other examples from this favorite trope or writing style are The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White, and also Sinner by Maggie Stiefvater. You know her werewolf books? Yeah, she wrote a secret 4th one about one of the side characters, and I enjoyed that one way more than the main couple. My second favorite thing that I like in books is the trope of the monster mash or the supernatural kitchen sink. I don't just love vampires, I love all supernatural creatures, though I particularly don't jive well with angels or anthro things, especially birds or lizards. Werewolves don't count in that, of course. And one of my favorite things about supernatural creatures is when they all interact and it all has meaning. There could even be politics involved, or feuds, or love, or friendship. I just love it. This is a love that spreads through all sorts of media, not just books. I love seeing it on TV shows and movies. I can appreciate a good monster slaying series, such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I love when all of these supernatural creatures are characters within the books, all with different communities, systems, and dynamics. Some examples of this are, of course, The Vampire Chronicles again. One book in particular, The Tale of the Body Thief, is more of an urban fantasy book, which is sort of what this trope usually falls under, so I can appreciate it. Not those Atlantis books, though, because they're bird people. I don't like birds. Some other examples include the Sookie Stackhouse or the Southern Vampire Mysteries by Charlene Harris, Women of the Otherworld by Kelly Armstrong, and basically any urban fantasy with supernatural creatures. Item number 3 in things that I like or seek out in books are lonely protagonists. This is obviously because it is a universal and relatable feeling to side with a lonely and insecure protagonist. I don't mean in the romance context where they are self-deprecating or feel empty or unwhole due to not having a partner. I just mean generally feeling lonely, outside of the norm, insecure, or not really being able to make friends easily. I do enjoy watching the process of the character trying to make friends and the effects of that come with that. But even if they don't, it is still compelling and encouraging to watch them go through this journey and to understand that you aren't alone in these feelings and experiences. It also proves to be beneficial when there is a point in a story where their loneliness works to other people's benefits and they are able to draw that character into something a little bit darker. My top 2 favorite books that have this are Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier and The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I love both protagonists in that story. I can relate to them very, very well, especially the protagonist in Rebecca. I admit that I actually cried reading that book because her anxieties and her fantasies of what was going on, how she imagined other people thinking about her and talking about her behind her back, were very relatable, and I admit I was very affected by it. So that is another one of my favorite things in books. Number 4 of things that I like in books are obviously dark academia. So that is a huge umbrella term. It could mean academic thrillers, academic mysteries, academic psychological thrillers, just basically anything set in an academic setting. Obviously, I've made it pretty clear on my channel that I do enjoy dark academia. I just love any book set in an academic setting. I like students' perspectives, but I also like the teachers' perspectives as well. They both provide very interesting stories. I am a recent graduate university student. I graduated last year, and I just felt so comfortable and successful in university, so I just love being in that environment again in my books. And since my experience in university was studying, worrying, doing tests, going to lectures, I love to see more exciting things happen in these academic settings, like murder or or, you know, other horrible mysteries that they have to solve. And these books just tend to be super atmospheric. They always describe the settings really well, and I especially like when the content that they're studying in school ties in well with the themes of the novel. It is just a perfect mixture. It's a perfect recipe for a really interesting story, and I love them a lot. Now, I have a video on my channel that recommends dark academia books, which you should view somewhere. I'll put it somewhere. And I plan to post more recommendations in the future, so seek out those videos for my recommendations on this subject. The 5th and final topic I am going to discuss in this video on things that I enjoy in books is a strong friend group dynamic. I mean, this one is pretty self-explanatory. I love big friendship groups, and I love when each person in the friendship group brings in a different dynamic. I love the individual relationships between character A, character B, and then character A and character D, and I love how they all interact as a group. It's a very, very exciting system to be reading, especially if they disagree with a plan, or they're joking with each other, or arguing. It's just a lot of good, deep conflict that doesn't have to be life or death. And it's just so great when you can find a book series that just captures friendship dynamics so well. It's very unique and very exciting. It happens a lot more in YA books, and that is something that I do really enjoy about YA. My 2 favorite series that express this dynamic very well is obviously the Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater, but also the Darkest Powers trilogy by Kelly Armstrong. That is a lot of very exciting things going on in that friendship group. And a little bonus favorite that is actually attached to this concept is the idea of the helpful ghost friend. Now, I won't spoil anything, but those 2 books feature things like that. I love a helpful ghost friend. It is just so cute and so sweet, and I love the connection that ghost character has with other character. It's just really sweet, and I love ghosts. I love helpful little ghost kids. They just make my heart so happy. And it's so sad, but it's so good, and I love it so, 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 so much. If there are other books that feature a helpful ghost friend, please let me know. So that's it. that is the list of things that I like and seek out in books. Obviously, there are more points that I tend to seek out, but they're just a little bit boring. Like, I tend to seek out if a book has good ratings on Goodreads, has a good word of mouth, and other things like that, like specific genres, but that's just a little boring to discuss, and I thought 5 nice clean points would make for a good video. Alright, now it's time to talk about the things that I dislike in books. Great. Before I start, I just want to make a disclaimer that this is less of a list of the genres and types that I don't like, since I tend to avoid things I dislike. Rather, this is going to be a list of grievances, things that appear in books that I do want to read that I don't like. It's just the little things that tend to turn me off of a story. It is not meant to say that any book that uses these ideas is the worst book I've ever read. It's more of just me complaining about things that I don't like. So think of this as a list of pet peeves, essentially. Let's all go into this with an open mind. This is meant to be fun, and let's get started. So I once again have 5 specific things that I wanted to talk about today. However, this side of the coin has a lot more bonus points of me just disliking little teeny tiny little aspects of stories. So let's just get started. So the first thing that I dislike in books is specifically in the historical fiction genre, when a character will encounter an event, a place, or a person just because they're famous and just because the readers will know who it is. Yes, this is a very common thing that does happen in books, and I do understand why it happens. And I don't obviously hate every single one. Context is key, but it's so annoying when they're just like, and then my character was able to meet George Washington, and George Washington liked my character and got to talk to him during one of the most important times of his life. It's just doing it for the sake of already perceived knowledge, and it leaves kind of a bad taste in my mouth because it also tends to retroactively look at history in a certain way, look at people as positive or negative just for their perception in history. And most of the time, I don't enjoy it. I also wanted to add that there is a difference between this little idea that I hate and just the bonkers fanfiction style fantasy of throwing every character into your book to see what sticks. Kind of like Kim Newman's Anno Dracula series. I like stuff like that. I like when it's totally bonkers and bananas, everybody's in there, and it's just a fun romp. I don't like when stories try to make such a serious thing out of meeting a historically significant person just for the sake of that they are already well known and their characters getting a little boost by meeting them. Do you know what I mean? So then the second thing that I dislike in my books is when siblings hate each other for no reason. Obviously, there is going to be stories where there is a definite reason why siblings hate each other, and siblings are going to be annoyed with each other. There's going to be a lot of very interesting dynamics, especially if you have more than one sibling. But I love my sibling. Why would I hate them for any reason? I hate the stories especially when it's 2 sisters who hate each other, or 2 or more sisters who hate each other, because that is just, it's like a competition between them, and it's just rooted in misogyny, and I hate reading stories where 2 women, especially 2 sisters, hate each other. Once again, I want to reiterate, there are plenty of stories that use the sibling dynamic in an interesting way. I'm not saying that, I'm saying when it is needless. When siblings hate each other for no reason, and it doesn't really add to the conflict except for needless drama. So that is my second thing that I hate in books. Bonus round time. I don't particularly like chosen one narratives. I feel like that is a very, very old idea now. It has sort of been left behind in the YA genre where it was sort of birthed, but I don't like chosen one narratives. Obviously. I don't need a teenager saving the world for me. Fuck them kids. Another thing that I do not like in my books, if there is more than one character perspective, and chapter by chapter, it changes the reading perspectives. So character A would have third-person narration, and character B would have first-person narration. Why would you break up the flow of your own narration like that? That is just unbearably annoying to me, Deborah Harkness. Another detail I hate in books especially is very blatant description and exposition, where it's like spelled out literally for you. The book is not a play. It's a novel. It's written. It's always been a written medium. Why are you expositing like that? Ah, yes, you are my cousin, and together we will continue on this journey together. Just show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. It's in a book. Books are infinite amount of words. You don't need to be like it's a script. You don't need it to be like it's a CW show where they tell each other that they're siblings or that they're each other's cousins, and they tell each other exactly what they're doing so the audience can clue in, you know? It's a book. And the last aspect of this bonus round is very, very short sentences in action scenes. I jump. I gasp. I hit the guy. He hits back. I fall over. Pain. Screaming. Isn't that annoying? And doesn't that break the flow of the action? I think it does. Action doesn't have to be overly descriptive. You know, it's meant to be quick and scary. But you know what's not quick and scary? One-word sentences. Alright, my third and probably my biggest pet peeve when reading a story is when period-accurate fitted clothing or restrictive clothing is a metaphor for feminism or a repressed society. We all know this one. Is your collar too stiff? Are your skirts too heavy? Worst of all, is your corset digging into your bare skin for some reason because you don't have a shift underneath? Oh, isn't it so hard being a woman in X number year? Then get a proper fitting corset. It's just such an overused trope. I'm so tired of it. You don't see me complaining about my bra or my tight jeans all the time as a metaphor for how repressed my society is, you know? And clothing fit people. Back then, they were tailored to fit people. The corsets were even, they added stomachers and they added different size difference to accommodate babies, obviously, when women had babies and their bodies changed. And you wear layers underneath your corset so they are not digging into your body. Now, the 1870s to the 1890s had metal eyelets in their corsets, which of course caused that horrible amount of brutal agony. That, mixed with the magazine depictions of female bodies, did create a horrible body and beauty standard. That I can allow. But if you are in the 17th century and you're complaining about your corset, just untie it. It's that simple. I wish it were that simple. But you know what? How else are you supposed to physically represent your repression in society by being a woman if your corset isn't, oh, it's just pushing your huge boobs up? Ugh. Alright, the other two grievances are actually that bad. In fact, they're actually pretty common tropes or ideas in a book. So number 4 of things that I hate in books is the trope name bury your gays, and the sort of new concept of villainize your gays instead of burying them. Villainize your gays is not an old trope. I will acknowledge that. I am just saying that it is the replacement now for bury your gays. These are the ideas that if your character is LGBT or queer in some way, they die for drama. Or now, they are now the evil culprit for drama. Obviously, I don't like bury your gays for the very obvious reason. Villainize your gays, however, I am very conflicted on, because yes, hot villains, hot queer villains. Good motivations? Absolutely. Go off. Sky's the limit. Bad motivations? I'm not into that, because then you're implying that all queer people are evil or outside the norm in a bad way. And I don't like that. I'm all for campy, hot, gay villains, but I don't want evil, predatory, or criminal queer villains without proper motivation. And we are down to my final complaint. If you lasted this long, good job. You can handle a lot of, complaining. Number 5 of the things that I dislike in books is the idea our monsters are different when it is heavily enforced. Our monsters are different in media is the idea that your vampires, your werewolves, or your any other supernatural creatures have to be unique within your medium. So you can't have all of the stereotypes that Dracula has. You want to have your vampires be able to catch fire in the sunlight, but they aren't affected by crosses. Things like that. It's all the little shifts that make your own monsters unique. What I don't like is the blatant and gross way that people use it, where they're like, my vampires don't sparkle, okay? My vampires are actually evil and masculine and actually quite violent. They aren't the emotional vampires that you're used to, you little teeny boppers. Just sort of that gross way that the trope is used. I'm all for creativity in my monsters, don't get me wrong. If there is a very interesting idea, I perk right up and I am super into it. But if it's just changes that are made to be like, oh, I'm returning back to the old-fashioned vampire when they were monsters. Boring. Boring, boring, boring. Try harder. Okay, we are down to my final bonus round of just stupid little things in any book that I don't like. And obviously, I don't think anybody likes these things, but it's my, floor to complain right now, so let's just get into it. Obviously, I and anybody else doesn't like improper foreshadowing or a sudden twist that doesn't fit into the story. I mean, Game of Thrones showrunners, I think you're supposed to gradually build up plot season after season and then come to a satisfying conclusion, even if we know it. It's actually more fun if we do know the twist in thrillers, in mysteries, or in drama. I have a lot more fun because I was able to follow the clues that you set up instead of derailing the train and crashing all of us into a fiery oblivion. The next thing that I dislike, and I don't know if it is that common because some people are into it, I'm not judging them, it is unequal relationships in romantic partners. This just happens a lot in vampire stories for me, which is why it is a complaint of mine. I don't like really gross power imbalances, especially ones that are rooted in age or misogyny or class or race. Ew, I don't need there to be a very, very gross power imbalance that isn't properly explored and is just gross and toxic. I am not personally into that. I like when my romantic couples in books like each other. And I think that's an unpopular opinion right now, but I like when they like each other. Another stupid grievance is just when the story kind of teeters out and is very anticlimactic. Like the denouement isn't satisfying. I read all those words, so I hate when the ending is just meh, and I kind of like, oh, I wasted all that time reading it. And my final little grievance isn't even that bad. It's just really cheap slang and humor. It's a little cringy for me. I don't like when they try to put modern things into a story when the author is in their 30s and they're trying to write, 15-year-olds, and it's just, ew, it's not working, Like, don't try to do that. One exception, though, is when it is very, very dated. Like, I read a book from 1990 describing teenage slang in it, and it was really interesting to see, like, what silly little words and phrases that the author used for their teenagers. That was very fun. So I think I need to separate myself from the time period. I don't like modern slang and humor. I kind of like dated, because it's kind of cheesy and nostalgic and fun. So that's it. That was my list of things that I dislike in books. See how disjointed and complainy it was? Because I don't really hate much. I just, don't like annoying little things that turn me off of a book. And notice that I didn't keep my little gothy, grumpy character for long because being negative isn't really that fun. What is fun, though, is to hear somebody complaining about something they're pretty passionate about, and I think I was doing that. So that's the real end of my video. I hope you enjoyed watching. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're interested in more content, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye! Okay, bye-bye!